Genji is useless. No, he's not. Next. I've genuinely no idea why every Genji post online is a complete over-exaggeration and doesn't align with reality. Feels like we're moving away from fun, skill expression of Overwatch 1 to boring, low-skill Moira-type counter-watch gameplay. Thoughts? I hate losing to Moira as much as the next person, but not because I have some strange obsession with only playing against skilled characters, but rather because I know when I lose to a Moira, it's because I miss my shots, and now I feel like facepamming. It's true, it probably took less effort for the Moira to kill me, but why in the world does that matter? Well, I'm going to show why it matters with some math. Let's talk about engagement distance. Let's say you're playing as Genji and you have managed to find a Moira, you're in a 1v1 and you fancy your chances of winning. They are just a support after all, so you should be able to kill them with your DPS hero. Let's take a look at some of Moira's numbers. Moira does 60 damage per second with a very forgiving aim instant, being essentially aimbot if your crosshair is in the general vicinity of the target. Moira's suck has a range of 20 meters. If we were to engage this Moira in a straight up 1v1, then a few different things can happen. Let's look at scenario 1. If Moira spots Genji and the Genji begins chasing the Moira at a distance of 20 meters, it means that Moira will have 5 meters worth of essentially free damage before Genji can close enough distance to start fighting back, because Genji dashes only 50 meters worth of distance. Genji's current move speed when traveling forward is 6 meters per second. Moira's is 5.5 meters per second. However, heroes move slower when they travel backwards and can only achieve 90% of their base movement speed, meaning if the Moira is traveling backwards, she's moving at 4.95 meters per second. That means over 1 second of chase, Genji would close 1.05 meters and the Moira would deal 60 damage to the Genji, meaning his new total health is 190. It would then take Genji another 3.15 seconds to chase before he was within 15.8 meters of the Moira, which is still not within dash range. Over those 3.15 seconds, Genji would have taken another 189 damage, bringing his total health to 1. Genji would die to his support before he was even close enough to dash onto them. However, this is not as realistic, as you would never not dash onto the Moira if you were committed to fighting her. So let's go to scenario 2. The Moira spots the Genji 20 meters and begins to suck. At that exact moment, the Genji dashes to the Moira in order to close enough distance to fight her. A Genji dash takes 0.3 seconds from start to finish, so that amounts to 18 damage that Genji cannot avoid, bringing his health down to 232. Assuming Moira has been walking backwards since the fight began, she's now at a distance of 6.5 meters. However, the math starts to get very tricky now, so stay with me. I've calculated the total with the Moira's hitbox to be around 0.4 meters. Assuming the old Genji spread math we did earlier, that you didn't see because the video would be too long, that means Genji will land a total of 1 shuriken, because at this distance his spread is too large in order to land more than that if he is looking directly at the Moira. There is technically a way to land 2 shurikens at this distance, but it would require deliberately missing the Moira in order to split the distance between 2 shurikens. For the sake of argument, we will assume we are looking directly at the Moira. Our 1 shuriken would hit, dealing 27 damage to the Moira, bringing your total health down to 223. The Moira will continue to run away as the Genji chases, closing the distance by 0.7 meters between Genji bursts, bringing the total distance to 5.8 meters. Over that 0.68 seconds it takes for Genji to do another burst, Moira would have inflicted 41 more damage and healed herself by 16 health, bringing Moira's total HP to 239 and Genji's total HP to 189. Assuming we continue this until Genji could land all 3 shurikens from 1 burst, which would require a total distance 3.05 meters, Genji's new total health would be 30, because time equals distance divided by speed. This means it would take 2.6 seconds for Genji to get into 3 shuriken burst range, meaning the Moira would inflict 156 more damage. This works out to be 186 minus 156, meaning it equals 30. Now let's take a look at Moira's health. Assuming she's getting hit 100% of the time, she's taking 27 damage every 0.68 seconds over a distance of 2.75 meters. Her total health works out to be 220. This is because the Genji will have shot 3 times during his travel, and his 4th shot would be ready just in time to let him land all 3 shurikens, meaning his 4th wouldn't count because it is barely too slow, meaning Genji does a total of 81 damage over the 2.6 seconds. Her original health was 239 minus 81 equals 158. However, Moira will be self-healing during those 2.6 seconds, meaning our new total health is 220, because over 2.6 seconds, Moira would have healed a total of 62. 158 plus 62 equals 220. This is the best case scenario for Genji in a straight up 1v1, because the Moira hadn't used any of her abilities yet and she's still won by a mile in terms of damage output. Now this is obviously a little biased because this is a fairly rare scenario where everything works out the way we wanted it for demonstration. However, this is not too far off what actually occurs in game a lot of the time. I know I use Moira as an example, but you can put most other heroes in the game to this test and realize Genji loses a large majority of the time. Now to the point of this video. I think his biggest problem is his inability to close distance to targets without a major flank. This is important because Genji is really the only hero who needs to flank in order to actually fight, though this can somewhat apply to Tracer or Sombra as well, though to a lesser extent due to their abilities such as Translocate or Recall, meaning they technically engage and leave through the front line, unlike Genji, who would need to commit to dash to go through the front line, and because that is also his escape, he would die 99% of the time, unless he was able to quickly combo someone down and dash back out, which is extremely risky and tends to be extremely low reward, as it rarely works out. So I have a couple of suggestions as to how we could fix this specific problem. Genji has other major issues, but I believe this to be his biggest fault. Option 1, 35% spread reduction. Now this sounds like a lot, however when you look at the math, it's really not, and honestly is a pretty minute change in the grand scheme of things. This would make it so Genji would only need to be 5 meters away to hit a 1 meter wide target instead of 7.62 meters. This would increase Genji's 1v1 effectiveness in a duel, would not impact his overall damage output to tanks or point blank, and would increase his skill ceiling as he would require greater accuracy if you wanted to make use of the buffs. The point of this change is so his overall damage output would remain the same, meaning he wouldn't become any more of a tank buster than he is now. It would also keep his combos the same as they are now, meaning no need to relearn a new combo, as well as increase his effectiveness at range in the 1v1 where Genji struggles the most. This is honestly the best option for him in my opinion, and can honestly still see him being pretty weak after the changes. Option 2. 30 shuriken damage. After the recent health changes, Genji's damage has majorly fallen behind, and he currently needs to land 9 shurikens and a melee on a 250 HP target to kill them at point blank range. An increase of 3 damage per shuriken would mean you only require 8 shurikens in a melee kill, essentially giving him slightly more leniency in the duel. I'm personally not a huge fan of this change in particular because it doesn't address the core issues with Genji in my opinion. It would likely only make him better at things that people hate. It wouldn't improve his actual design, so you'd be stuck in the limbo of not being able to do anything other than go through those extremely quick body bursts, which would limit his playstyle, making him frustrating to play against due to his new one-dimensional style, and would make tank busting even stronger. And then obviously number 3, the nuclear option. I personally hate this choice, but it's brought up so often that I think I should talk about it, which is obviously 2 dashes. As I stated earlier, Genji struggles a lot with going in and out of fights because his dash serves as his escape and his engage, meaning you have to make a huge decision of when and how to use it, and using it even just the slightest bit wrong can be the difference between a win or a loss. I'm also not a huge fan of this change as it removes that extremely high risk decision making part of Genji and would lower his game sense skill ceiling. Dash would also undergo a large amount of rework and cooldown length change, as waiting 16 seconds for 2 dash charges would be far too long, longer than Suzu in fact, but it would also be too much damage as he would repeatedly dash through a team back and forth with no real counterplay. This would require the most work to do and would remove a lot of Genji's identity. However, it would technically fix one of his major problems being risk to reward graph, so that is the only reason why I included it. I have a lot of other ways I think I could possibly fix Genji, however the video would be far too long, and I haven't thought through them and done the math on them yet to figure out how large or small a change would need to be, so maybe like and subscribe for part 2. Now obviously we've done the math to go over why he's so bad, but obviously that only applies to Moira. Now I could do the math applying to every hero, and you would see that Genji loses in a vast majority of cases. There's very little heroes that Genji can effectively 1v1 in this game. The biggest issue with Genji is the fact that the numbers are actually not as important as they seem. I know that seems a little counterproductive considering the fact we just spent an entire video talking about the numbers, but there is actually quite a lot of nuance to these things. For example, taking a duel on Genji is not just this character does that much damage, this character does that much damage, therefore this character wins. There's obviously significantly more at play, which you would think would benefit Genji because then his lower output or his lower damage output would be mitigated by the fact he has hypermobility, but in fact in most cases, most heroes also have hypermobility because there's a lot of mobility creep, and there's things like power creep, meaning that his damage output is even significantly lower, and then you have things like the armor changes, and then you have things like the damage resistance on certain characters, and then you have things like the self-heal, the TPs, the MOs, and then when you start accounting for all this, you realize that Genji is actually significantly worse, and if you were just doing raw damage matchups, Genji would be better than he was if you considered all the abilities in the game. Therefore, technically speaking, Genji becomes worse if you look over the math and start applying the actual game to it. So the best scenario for Genji to look like an actual good hero would be to just look at the math, and even then he's still terrible. So in every scenario, whether you're just looking at the math or the nuance of the game and how the game actually plays, regardless of how you look at it, Genji is statistically horrible. Now, as you can see, in the competitive PC pool, Genji currently has a 2.11% pick rate and a 50.91% win rate. What does this mean? That's a good question. It means absolutely fucking nothing. Not anything at all. Literally nothing. Now, a lot of people like to look at pick rates and win rates and go, well, his pick rate is too high, or his win rate is too high, therefore the character is broken. Well, I want to go over a couple of reasons why that doesn't make any fucking sense at all. The pick rate of a character is not always dictated by the strength of the character. Take Ana, for example, who currently has a 10% pick rate over every rank on the PC pool. Now, Ana is not the best support in the game, not when you have things like Baptiste and Ilari and Kiriko. Ana, in fact, is a pretty mid support as of right now, if not on the weaker side, yet she has the highest pick rate of the support cast in the game. Now, does that mean Ana is overpowered? No, not at all. That means Ana is a fun character to play, and people are playing her because she's fun. Now, there could be multiple ways to interpret a high pick rate. You could assume that people are picking them because they are strong, or you could assume people are picking them because they are fun. Both answers basically mean nothing, because there's no way to decipher between them. For example, Ana having a 10% pick rate could be because the anti-nade and the nade and the sleep are extremely strong against the very good tanks right now. For example, if someone is running you down on Ram, then you just spam your cooldowns on them, and it's super effective. That could be a reason she has a high pick rate. Another reason she could have a high pick rate is because she's an extremely high skill character, requiring a lot of game sense and mechanical skill in order to work. And she's rewarded if she's able to pull off those things. Now, looking at the data that we can see now with her win rate and her pick rate and her KDA, is there any way to genuinely say for a fact that one reason is more likely than the other? No. Therefore, the stat means nothing, because there is no way to decipher the actual meaning of it. For example, if I look at a 48.81% win rate on Ana, does that mean that Ana is weak? Well, by definition, she is on the weaker side, as her win rate is below 50%. But does that actually mean Ana is a weak hero because her win rate is below 50%? No, not at all. Because by that logic, that would mean that Ashe was also a bad character, and Baptiste was a bad character, and Echo was a bad character. Where these characters are clearly not bad heroes. Baptiste is probably the second best support in the entire game right now. Ashe is up there as one of the best DPS in the game right now. Kree has a 49% win rate. He is also one of the best DPS in the game right now. Echo is also one of the best DPS in the game right now. So Ashe, Kree, Echo, and Pharah are likely to be the top four, where it's more likely to be Pharah on top, Echo second, and then Kree or Ashe are fighting for third. Now, they are the top 3 to top 4 best DPS characters in the game, and they all have a lower win rate than Genji. They also, some of them, have a lower pick rate than Genji. So if you were to just work off the math, you would assume that Genji is A, stronger than those characters, or B, is more fun than those characters. Now, is there any way to decipher whether Genji is more fun or better than those characters? Not really. Without any large, extensive knowledge of the game and how it plays and how it works, and the understanding of the interaction between all the characters in a game, and understanding how the game is actually played, there's no way to decipher whether any of these characters are better or worse than each other based entirely off win rate and pick rate. It would take an enormous amount of game knowledge in order to look at these stats and be able to pull literally any concrete evidence of either of these things being applicable, which means that balancing off pick rate and win rate is literally meaningless. When we can get to a world where Ashe has a lower pick rate and a lower win rate than Genji, and that would then assume that Genji is a stronger character than Ashe, is ludicrous, when Ashe is up there as one of the best heroes in the game, and Genji is borderline a throw pick. Obviously, Genji is a cooler character than Ashe. I'm pretty sure everyone can agree with that. In terms of his gameplay loop, he is generally cooler. Therefore, does that make it okay that Genji's pick rate and his win rate is higher than Ashe's? Well, of course, like the answer has been the entire time, there is absolutely no way to know, because none of these numbers actually mean anything. Now, when things start to get to the hyper extreme, that's when you can maybe start to assume there's an issue going on with the hero. But even then, that is still not that applicable, because Ana has a 10% pick rate, but she's generally not even that good, so it doesn't even matter. If you were to nerf Ana based entirely off her pick rate, you would be nerfing a relatively mid, if not on the weaker side support, purely because people like to play her, which is obviously dumb. But it might not obviously not be because people like to play her. It might genuinely be because people are picking her because she is meta, when she is not. But unless you actually know that and play at a high rank in the game and understand the game like that, there's no way for you to know if the pick rate is because she is fun or because she is strong. Then you would obviously correlate that to the win rate next. Well, then if you did that, then you would look at Genji's 2% pick rate and his 51% win rate and assume that Genji was on the stronger side due to his pick rate being okay and his win rate being higher than normal. Therefore, you would assume he is either mid to the stronger side, which is wrong because he's one of the worst heroes in the game. And this is what the entire point of the video is. If you look at pick rates and win rates and decide to balance heroes based off of that, you are entirely stuck in a world where no matter how you balance the game in terms of these numbers, you will never get a balanced experience because these numbers don't actually tell you anything. Now, if you were to go to overbuff, and for example, Genji had a 30% pick rate and a 90% win rate, then yeah, you could probably see that that's relatively problematic. Even if he wasn't overpowered, he'd be winning so often compared to the other characters that he'd be the only thing that was getting played, and you would have to obviously change him in a way that it would lower his pick rate to add some more diversity to the game. Yes, I agree. That makes more sense. But a 10% pick rate, generally speaking, is not enough. Because over the course, that means in 10% of games, there is one Ana. And there are obviously 4 people picking support. So over those 10 games, there is one Ana, usually. So, anyway, this video was entirely made because there's people on Reddit in the Overwatch forums that go, yeah, but his win rate, blah, blah, blah. His pick rate, blah, blah, blah. Or, yeah, but look at these numbers, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, none of any of these things mean fucking anything. No, this is the same people who look at the scoreboard and are able to, like, they press tab mid-game and go, yeah, we're losing because of X reason while they're looking at the numbers on the scoreboard. When, by the way, they also mean absolutely fucking nothing. And I'm going to make a video about that too, about how the scoreboard actually killed ranked. Because, holy shit, the scoreboard it seemed like a great choice to add on paper. It was terrible. That was a really bad decision to add the scoreboard. Anyway, the next time someone wants to tell you that balancing off pick rates or win rates makes any sense, literally at all, you can send them this video.